A conversation with the new president of Thrive this morning on For the Record. Good morning, I'm Neil Heinen. Some 7 years after its conception, 5 years after its inception, and 2 years or so after its formal organization and launch, Thrive, the 8-county Greater Madison Region's economic development organization, is poised to get to work. It has a structure, it has a plan, it is getting funding, but perhaps most important, it has a leader. And he is Paul Jadin, and he joins me this morning on For the Record. Paul, thanks very much for coming on this morning. You know, you and I both know how long this has been going on. A good 7 years since 54 community leaders went out to Denver and kind of looked at what was going on there. And yet, we both know there's still a fair number of people in the 8-county region, which is really the region watching this show this morning, that don't know what Thrive is or what Advance Now is. So I think we need to start there, and I'd like you to just describe Thrive.
Well, Thrive, first of all, is a geography, but it's also an organization. And Advance Now, of course, is the strategy that organization is about to deploy. The organization is dedicated to economic development in the Dane County area and every county that touches Dane County. And the intent is, just like with M7, New North, Synergy, the other regions in Wisconsin, for this organization to do what I call branding and banding. And that simply means we need to do a better job of telling the world who this region is in terms of Madison as kind of the anchor and everything else being a very significant piece of the economic development region. And then we also need to band all of the economic development activities together so that the sum of the parts are better than the whole. And I think that what people need to understand about regions in general, specifically here in Thrive, is that this isn't an organization that with 7 people is going to do what the 100 or so economic development professionals out there already are not able to do. Instead, we're here to guarantee that all of those very capable and skilled professionals are better able to do their job because we're filling some gaps, we're energizing their strategic plans, we're refining some of the strategic plans, and most of all, we're working together to tell the story about Madison and the Thrive area.
When I think about this, I go back to some examples that the viewers might recognize. Silicon Valley, going back a long time, the Research Triangle in North Carolina. But why? What is the significance of regions, Paul? Why is that important?
Well, first of all, I was one of the founders of the New North, which was the first region, and that was established in northeast Wisconsin. The reason for that was because the state wasn't doing anything to brand itself back in 2002, 2003. And there was concern about where we ranked on all of the national rankings, bottom 10 in CEO Magazine, Inc. Magazine, Forbes, etc. And so there was some sense of urgency where regional private sector individuals got together and said, if the state's not going to do it, we better do something to take care of ourselves. M7 followed, Thrive likewise. And I think then when I was with the state, the reorganization of the Commerce Department was done to accommodate that regional activity or that extended enterprise, so that, just as I said earlier about Thrive not being able to do what all of the myriad of other professionals couldn't do, we wanted to make sure that 100 people at the state of Wisconsin were not trying to do what almost thousands throughout the state were unable to do, and instead we wanted to take advantage of regional activity to guarantee that when it came to entrepreneurship and innovation, international activity, business and industry, economic competitiveness issues, and then eventually marketing, that we were using all of those extraordinary and capable people throughout the regions to do the work on the ground, essentially.
Yeah. You were one of the creators of New North. You were the mayor of Green Bay.
Yes.
You were the head of the Green Bay Chamber of Commerce. You were the first head of the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. How does that kind of lead you to thrive today?
Well, the fact that I've had experience at every level of economic development, supervising an economic development authority, then an economic development corporation for Brown County, then helping found the New North, and ultimately creating the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, obviously informs the strategy. It gives me the ability to engage some of the things that we've planned, and most of all, I think it allows us to take the 5 planks of the platform for the Advance Now strategy and merge them with the 5 divisions that were created at WEDC, those being the Economic and Community Development, Entrepreneurship and Innovation, International, Business and Industry, and Marketing. They link well with the 5 planks of Advance Now, which are human capital, economic competitiveness, entrepreneurship and innovation, the diversity plank, and marketing.
Sure. So. Is this a unique advantage for the greater Madison region, Paul, or is this something all 9 economic development entities in the state are trying to do in terms of their relationship with WEDC?
That was my hope a year and a half ago.
That it was a strength for us.
And that was one of the primary reasons that I wanted this job, is because I didn't see the change occurring that we wanted. And I think by being more effective in linking to the WEDC strategy and by being more collaborative than the other regions, Thrive can go from lagging in the economy to being the leader. And it unequivocally has to be the leader in the state, or the overall state economy is going to continue to be weak.
Talk about that a little bit. You know, it's easy to look at Thrive as needing to be competitive with Omaha and Salem, Oregon, and Columbus, Ohio. I mean, these are similar regions. They're trying to do similar things. But in terms of the other 8 economic development entities in the state, what's that? How would you describe that relationship?
Well, I think first of all, Madison and Milwaukee, the M7 and Thrive regions, are not doing what they need to do to lead this economy. And I think there are signs where
just by virtue of population centers,
by virtue of who they are, what they've been in the past, and so forth. And I think that's something that has to turn around. And we in this 8-county region, I believe, have a strategy and the ability to propel this area to the forefront. And in the process, we also need to link with M7 in particular. That 94 corridor is going to be absolutely critical to building the economy between Milwaukee and Madison. And then we need to link with the others to make sure that the strategies are all being employed fairly similarly. Each area is going to have a different cluster approach, for instance. Yep. Each area is going to have different pet projects. But I think for the most part, we all have to be engaging the state, and we all have to be employing the resources in a very similar fashion.
Yeah. Well, Thrive is the organization, Advance Now is the plan, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the plan.
Today?
I'm back with Paul Jadin, who is the president of Thrive, the 8-county regional economic development organization for the greater Madison region. And Thrive grew out of the Collaboration Council, which some of you are probably familiar with, and then a couple of years ago hired an outside consultant, Market Street Services out of Atlanta, to kind of create the blueprint for the work that Thrive would do, and it's called Advance Now. Describe that for us, Paul.
Well, Mac Holliday and Market Street have been working over the last year to come up with this strategy, and as I said earlier, it's 5 blanks that are intended to really fuel a change in the way we deal with economic development in the area. And part of it, of course, is reorganizing our board. We're going to be seating a new board in January, and we're also going to be adding a couple of staff people. But essentially, it's going to be those work groups that the strategy called for that get us to an improvement in the way we deal with human capital, in the way we deal with economic competitiveness and entrepreneurship and innovation, and then, of course, the way we sell ourselves to the world and ultimately the way we deal with leadership and diversity in the area. On that last plank, we're going to be asking the chambers of commerce to do more in terms of encouraging leadership activity and an improvement in the way we deal with diversity in the area. But we're also going to be engaging all of the schools from K-12 to technical college to university, and that's happening already. Everybody, of course, is very concerned and willing to get involved with the workforce paradox and dealing more effectively with our human capital. But then most of it comes down to the economic competitiveness issue and what kind of cluster activities are we going to be engaged in and how we're going to deal with entrepreneurship and innovation. And of course, if we're not in Wisconsin dealing with entrepreneurship and innovation in this area, then nobody else is going to get it.
Yeah, I kind of find it helpful because Mac Holliday and Market Street did work in Austin. Opportunity Austin is sort of the name of that plan, and it's an interesting reference. I mean, there are others, and Mac has done a number of them in other cities. But that's kind of the brand, isn't it? The idea that people will recognize Advance Now as Greater Madison's economic development plan. Yeah,
we do need to lead with our geography. You know, I always told people that if you're from New Mexico and someone says Thrive, it could just as easily be Paducah, Kentucky. So we need to tell the world that this is the Dane County area, the Capital Region, the South Central Wisconsin. We will, in early next year, come up with a way to lead with that geography a little better.
You've mentioned clusters a couple of times. Describe that, and how does that inform the work of Thrive?
Well, clusters essentially go to the myriad of activities that surround one specific industry segment. For instance, paper could mean you're making paper, you're converting paper, you're coating paper, you're making paper machines, printing, all of that.
A New North
eventually,
cluster,
yeah,
right?
That's a cluster that's very, very unique to the New North.
Yep.
Here, agriculture, bioag is a very good opportunity for us. Every one of the 8 counties is involved in some form of agriculture or food processing, bioag activities, whether it's research and development for new seeds or dairy production, milking equipment, things like that. That's an idea of where we may try to pursue more activity that would allow for bringing in more business related to the ag industry, telling the world that this is indeed the center of the state that is the center of agriculture. Yeah. And then there are a variety of others, clearly biotech in general. The insurance industry is something that we probably want to focus on as well. But there was a study out just this past week that showed there are 37 clusters in the Milwaukee area, 32 in the Green Bay area, and only 13 in this region. And it suggests something about the diversity of this economy, and we certainly want to pursue that and take advantage of those additional clusters that exist throughout the state of Wisconsin and try to bring some of those activities here.
So you would like to grow that number from 13?
I think it's important that we have more diversity here in terms of those clusters, yes.
So that raises kind of an interesting question. I think a lot of people might think that the goal of an economic development entity like Thrive would be to attract businesses to the region, and I'm sure that's part of it. But how much of it is to keep the businesses we have here and to foster growth from spin-offs from the UW and startups that might come from Epic or that kind of thing? What's the balance there?
That's more than 90% of it. I mean, we have to create an environment in which entrepreneurs feel that risk is worth taking so that they can start a new business, grow that business. We also have to have an environment where existing corporations, whether it's a 50 employee business or a 5,000 employee business, feel like they can add more employees and add more product lines and things like that. So growth and expansion and retention are absolutely critical. And then, yes, attraction is important, and that'll be a part of our marketing plan. But I'm telling my colleagues throughout the region that the very first thing we have to do next year is develop a much more robust business retention and expansion plan. And that means just something as basic as guaranteeing that we're doing well over 1,000 visits throughout the 8-county region to our businesses to understand what their threats are, what their opportunities are, and how we can help.
One of the things that constantly comes up in any discussion like this is the availability of capital, of venture capital, angel capital in particular. It's a statewide issue. We know that. We tried to address it at the state level. How does Thrive as a region compete in that area? Are there any advantages, or is this something the state has to address in order for Thrive to be successful?
There's no question that that's one of the biggest gaps in state resources right now, and I was pleased to participate in a committee that put together the current plan of somewhere between $150 million to $200 million, and when you add the private funds to that, it'll probably be as high as $600 million, which would be a phenomenal increase in the available capital for the state of Wisconsin. And when you look at what's happening in Madison in particular and the surrounding 7 counties, this is an area that should get more than its proportional share. In other words, if we don't do better than 1/9 of that overall pot, we're failing. So I think as we go forward with potentially more than $500 million available in venture capital and early seed capital and so forth, you're going to see Thrive and the individual counties working very aggressively to place that money in the hands of young entrepreneurs or any age entrepreneurs.
Yeah. When we come back, I'd like to talk about 2013 and sort of your plan for this year coming up, and we'll do that. My guest this morning is Paul Jadin, President and CEO of Thrive, the 8-county economic development organization for the greater Madison region, and one of 9 around the state. We're talking about Thrive and Advance Now, which is the economic development plan, the blueprint for growing economic development in the greater Madison region. And I guess I'm sensing, Paul, a sense of urgency right now, and I think looking around the country, we can see what other regions are doing, and they are competing, and they're competing with us, frankly, and
sure.
and so 2013 seems pretty important to me. How do you look at the year, even beginning in the first quarter of the year, in terms of what you would like to accomplish with Advance Now?
Well, first of all, I think we need to get everybody on board. I've been traveling the region and trying to enlist support and partnership from everybody involved, and that's going extremely well. I think everybody sees this as a strategy that they can get on board with. And I've also been sharing my personal pledge and approach with colleagues that I've worked with when I was chamber president, and mayors that I worked with when I was mayor, and folks with whom I've got some rapport. And I think that when we talk about that partnership, which is absolutely critical, they need to know we're not here to be a subordinate or a superior. We're here to be a peer. We're not here to try to introduce resources that will duplicate what we already have. We're here to simply propel those that are already in place. And we want to make sure that everybody is at the table and has a voice in how we're implementing the Advance Now strategy. But then primarily we want to guarantee that all of the counties and communities have a core level of services that include a business retention and expansion program, some degree of international capacity, the human capital issue in terms of workforce development, and then just basic prospect protocol, where what happens when someone calls and says, I'm looking for 10,000 square feet in a business park. So those are the kinds of things that early next year we'll try to refine. But then we're going to be looking at getting that brand in place that we can utilize more effectively. In fact, my staff is already kind of piggybacking what the state is doing with the In Wisconsin brand, so that as they advertise in Site Selector magazine or CEO or things like that, we're going to have a piece right next to it And when the world sees Wisconsin, they're going to see, okay, this Thrive area might be a specific place in Wisconsin that we want to investigate. And we also want to identify what approach we're taking to our cluster activity, whether it's bioag or something else that the partners want to pursue. And I think the intent then is to get those work groups coming up with very specific pieces of the strategy that my staff and all of the partners throughout the region can implement in the second quarter and third quarter of 2013.
So are you feeling that you're accomplishing something in terms of breaking down, Paul, the perception, a sort of anti-Madison bias, you know, that does exist somewhere, you know, in some places around the state, and this sense that Madison has a disproportionate share of all things good, and that it's, you know, it's calling all the shots.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't think it has a disproportionate share of all things good, but I wouldn't be unhappy if a couple of years from now we can say that it did. So that's critical. And yes, we are trying to break down that parochialism, and I think that's going very well. And again, I can't stress enough that if the Advance Now strategy is simply the board saying, here we are, we're ready to go, and let's get our staff working on those 5 planks, that's not going to be enough. We've got to get everybody from the economic development professionals throughout the region to the government officials to education. Everybody's got to be on board and recognize that they're a part of this partnership and that together we can do far more than we can individually.
And a bit of a sense that as Madison goes, the rest of the state goes.
I think that's an accurate statement.
Yeah. Paul, thanks very much. Good luck. I'm hoping that in the year ahead you'll come back and update us on the progress of Advance Now and Thrive.
Happy to.
Thanks very much. We're going to come back and wrap up For the Record right after this. My thanks to Paul Jadin for being here this morning. Next week, some of my fellow opinion journalists will be here to help me take a look back at what was a very busy 2012. That's next week. We'll see you then.